Hello, everyone, and welcome to Paranormal and Big Birds Talk. I am Jake, and I'm a paranormal investigator. And the first thing I'm going to say is in Big Birds is something that is not talked about way too much now, but it is something I have experienced and something that does need a bit more attention because there's a lot of history that is potentially could be in the making with the discovery of big birds. Now, of course, there's the Native American Thunderbird, which supposedly is a large bird that, when it flaps its wings, creates thunder, and its eyes create lightning. You can shoot lightning from its eyes. And then there's people who have nowadays say that they have seen pterosaurs or pterodactyls in real life, and I am pretty convinced that I have seen a pterosaur. It was a sighting about, I don't know, 3 years ago. It was in August. And for a few days in a row, when I was out walking the dog, this is in Western Virginia, not West Virginia, but Western Virginia, I saw a bird flying about, I don't know, maybe 30 feet above my head. And it looked like a leather brownish bird. And I'm really good with birds, especially vultures, raptors, stuff like that. I've done a lot of research into them, so I knew what I was looking at, and it was big. It wingspan had to be somewhere between 8 and 10 feet. It had a weird looking gigantic crest on its head, and I saw it for about 400 yards. I got a good 10, 15-second look at it, and the entire time I saw it, it never flapped its wings. Now, to me, that's watching it for 400, maybe even more yards straight without flapping. I don't know of any other bird that can do that because when I watch vultures or I watch eagles or something like that, they usually flap every once in a while. And I don't know of any birds, especially in Virginia during the summertime, that are all brown and leathery. I mean, this thing had no feathers whatsoever, and it had no tail, and it had very short legs sticking out the back. And when I first saw it, it took me a minute to think about it, but I was like, that that looked like a pterodactyl. That was my first impression, and I was like, that's pretty cool. So I went in, told my family, and then the next day, I was taking the dog out again on a walk, and I saw it again flying overhead. And this time, I got a little bit of a better look at it, and it had really weird eye features. It had black eyes. I don't know, maybe a bigger than a quarter a bit, but they were big and black. And it made no sound at all, not even a little whizzing sound. It just flew, and I watched it for about half a mile, and it only flapped once. So when it flapped, it wasn't quick, it was slow and smooth. It was weird looking. And I went inside, got on my laptop, did some research, and I discovered that I wasn't looking at a pterodactyl, but it was a pterosaur. Pterosaur is something that I was not familiar with because I'm not a dino expert, and it matched it completely, detail for detail. And I thought what was really interesting is after that I started doing some research into big birds, pterodactyls, pterosaurs, all that stuff. And there was a lady in Richmond, Virginia, the next day that saw the same exact creature I did. And it was detail for detail. Everything I saw, she saw. So that led me to believe that I wasn't crazy and I wasn't imagining it. And I didn't see the creature for another month. And then I saw it when I was outside taking the trash out. It was flying overhead, only this time it turned. And as it was flying right over me, it took a really quick turn to the left. And it didn't turn along, it didn't take a while for it to turn, let me say. I'm trying to think of how to describe this. It seemed almost like an animation. It was flying, and all of a sudden, out of complete nowhere, it took maybe half a second. It just made a sharp left turn and just started flying, and it went higher up into the air. And it didn't make any sound still, and that was a weird thing. I didn't hear any grunts, any whistles, nothing. And it just flew off over this mountain. And that was the last time I saw it, and I still haven't seen it. So, just for that time, I was seeing something weird. Now, a lot of people have been seeing different large birds all throughout history. Uh, Notably the Thunderbird, of course, in Texas, Illinois, California, Alaska, all those places, especially 1976 and 75 in Texas. There was a really crazy rash of sightings where there was more than 20 sightings, I believe. And I was reading a book, Big Bird, Modern Sightings of Flying Monsters by Ken Gerhard, and it's just amazing how many sightings there are of these things, and yet science doesn't really want to say anything about them other than people are just imagining. Well, up in Alaska, people have been describing a bird. It They describe it kind of like a Russian sea eagle or a bald eagle, only it's 2 to 3 times the size. It's capable of picking up a person easily. It's about the size of a Cessna plane. And this is very interesting because it's only been sighted along Alaska and the North and Canada, those places. And I did a little research and I watched a few videos about it, and I figured out and I read that what they are seeing are called teratorns, or the Greek scientific name is Argentavis magnificens, or however you say it. But they were in North and South America and Central, and they went extinct about 6 to 8 million years ago. And the estimation of their wingspan is somewhere between 20 to 26 feet. And the birds stood not that tall, maybe 2.5, 3 feet tall, and it weighed 176 pounds. And there have been many, many sightings, especially in Alaska is the hotbed for it. The far eastern Russian states have been seeing it. There was sightings of it in California, just a bit of all over America. But people believe they're seeing teratorns, and teratorns, some of them, there's 6 different types of teratorns. The most recent one died out about six to 10,000 years ago, and most of the skeletons come from the La Brea tar pits, but those are from the smaller teratorns, which their wingspan was about 11.5 to 12 feet. Not that big, pretty big, especially the way we look at it now. Our largest is the Andean condor with 11 and 12 feet. But I just thought that was really interesting how it's not as talked about as Bigfoot, not as talked about as Nessie, not as talked about as any of this stuff. But still, it's something that has been happening for thousands and thousands of years, and there's a lot of evidence for it. And I do think it is very possible that they could have survived, whether it be pterodactyls, pterosaurs, whatever. Because when you think about it, when the dinosaurs went extinct all those years ago, I think the sea creatures, dinosaurs, I think they survived. The plesiosaurs, megalodons, all them, I think they survived through underwater caverns, stuff like that. I think pterodactyls, pterosaurs either went up high into caves and hid and was able to eat rodents and all that stuff to stay alive. I think that's what happened. Now, of course, people say, well, how come they're not 20 feet, 30 feet wingspans? It's like, well, when you look at great whites at one point were gigantic, but their food changed and they got smaller. I think that's what happened with pterodactyls, pterosaurs. So instead of back millions of years ago, their wingspan being 20 to 30 feet, I think now somewhere between 8 to 20 feet would be their wingspan now, just because they've had to adapt over all those millions of years of the food constantly changing, especially with the ice ages. But I do think they're still around. I've seen enough evidence, and the sighting I had leads me to believe that they're still around. And of course, the other thing I'm going to talk about is, of course, Paranormal. A new app by Steve Huff, the SCD-1, has been released recently. It's gotten really, really good reviews. I would suggest, if you're interested in ITC spirit communication and ghost boxes, spirit boxes, I suggest you go check it out. I myself am a skeptic until proven otherwise. But one of the things in the paranormal field I've noticed is the PSB7 spirit box gets a lot of hate. Most people, if you talk to them, they have a PSB7 or have used a PSB7 at some point. And if I go to talk to different people and watch different YouTube videos, people just say the PSB7 spirit box isn't that good. Here's what I'm thinking. You have Joe's box, you have Andy's box, you have Frank's box, you have PSB7 and PSB11. What is the difference between all of them? They all do the same exact thing. They scan at different speeds radio waves. So they're all scanning the same stations at the same time. Why would they be different? Now, of course, the Joe's box makes it clear, takes out the static. So that's where that would be different. But honestly, when I look at videos on the internet, I don't see too much difference between the big 200, 300 spirit boxes and the $70, $75 PSP7. So I'm happy with my PSP7. I have never used, the only one I've ever used was a PSP7. I've talked to people who have used PSP's 11s and Frank's boxes, Andy's box. They said they're really good. But I just trust the PSP7 because I've used it for over a year. I've gotten amazing results with it. I just don't see why all this hate is deserved for the PSP7 because it's a great piece of evidence. And I think that if I gave the Andy's box, Joe's box, and all them a try, who knows? I might think the PSP7 is crap too, but I think it all comes down once again to a matter of opinion, and everyone has their own way of doing things, and that's what makes this field unique. Is everyone does their own thing, somewhat, and there's no gigantic figurehead telling us how to do it, what to do, the rules, and all that stuff. We're all figuring it out on our own. Like I've said many times, there are no experts in this field. Everyone is learning together, and we're taking clues and theories based on evidence and sightings that we've had and trying to come up with some logical way to make sense of all this. Another thing is these crazy TV shows that are coming out about the paranormal. I've looked into them. You have the Travel Channel with its Ghost Adventures and all those shows, Ghost Stalkers, and but there's some other ones like the Pretty Paranormal that I don't think it's still going, but it was very short-lived. And basically, what it was Playboy girls go out paranormal investigating, which I thought that was a load of crap, and it was basically making a mockery of the paranormal field. And then you had the emails going around recently of those people wanting to do the nude paranormal show. And you have to look between now and then the early 2000s. In the early 2000s, you had Ghost Hunters. That's basically all you had. That was the big TV introduction to all of this. And then, of course, before then, you had shows like In Search of, Dark Matters, different stuff like that. But Ghost Hunters was the first real showing of paranormal investigations on TV. And after that, of course, you had Ghost Adventures came on, Ghost Hunters International. Ghost Adventures was more of entertainment and a different way of doing things. Then you had Paranormal State, and then Paranormal Ghost Lab, and then all these shows came around, and then Psychic Kids, all that stuff. And they were all good until they started figuring out that there was a gigantic market for this. And then the shows started declining in quality. They started becoming more crazy shows showing up just to cash in on this recent paranormal craze. And if you look at all the shows recently, swamp hunters, mountain monsters, all them, they're not that good. I mean, you might like them, but I don't. I don't think they're good. I don't think the idea of people going around trying to trap these these paranormal monsters and then shoot them, I don't think that's a good idea. Especially since I would never want to shoot any cryptid if I was to see one, because nothing good will come of it. If you don't believe me, almost all the Bigfoot killings, people who have killed Bigfoot have experienced nothing but bad luck and possibly death. But I guess to each his own. And it's very interesting when you have the young generation of today being raised on the TV shows like Ghost Adventures, Ghost Hunters, and all these new ones, Ghost Stalkers. Really, the only one all through the years that's kind of remained the same is I'm surprised to say Ghost Adventures, because Ghost Hunters, their team changes every season, and their original was, let's try and collect evidence, but if we get evidence, let's try our best to debunk it, and if we can't debunk it, then we'll call it unexplained. Let's go to these residential homes, try to help these people, and do all that stuff. And then somewhere along the line, they changed to, well, everything's paranormal, and let's only investigate big locations. And Ghost Adventures has kind of stayed the same all through the years. They've changed. Of course, Nick left, and they've gotten different people to help with the show, but they basically stayed the same. And you can see, I think people are liking Ghost Adventures now than Ghost Hunters, especially since Ghost Hunters has had a few little spin-off shows. They had Ghost Hunters International and Ghost Hunters Academy, which I kind of like. Ghost Hunters Academy is pretty cool. But I think what we need right now in this paranormal field is a good new show to come out that is basically all serious as can be, and doesn't take this lightly. Because if you look at a lot of shows now, of course, they're in it for the money. Most of them are. And I can understand why. They see the potential to make a lot of money going in and just basically making a mockery of this field. And I know I'm not too keen on that, and I know different investigators who aren't exactly happy about it. But it's interesting to see how the paranormal has changed all through the years, because you go back to the 80s, 70s, 80s, and then early 90s, this stuff was very hush hush. And then now it's completely blown open everywhere you look. Paranormal this, paranormal that. So who knows? I guess it's time to come up, and then of course there will be a time it will go down, kind of like Rome. But this, I hope you all have enjoyed this little hangout on air. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, this will be uploaded to my YouTube